productive interview series on the Nico Pengin YouTube channel for productive gamers by a gamer with your host, Nico Pengin. Today, we are joined by Sebastion. Sebastion, I'm not even going to try to pronounce your last name. You're going to have to help me out with that.
It's all good. I'm Sebastion Mauldin. I'm the host of the ProNerd Report podcast, your premier podcast for video games, video game reviews, opinions, and notable interviews with video game industry personnel. So that's me in a nutshell. Like, I love video games. I've been a video gamer my whole entire life. I'm happy to be here.
Ooh, I like that intro. That's fire. Let's go. All right, you pretty much know exactly what the gist of this conversation is about. So, before we even dive any deeper into it, I got to know your top 5 video games and your favorite console.
Man, this is crazy because I'm not used to being on this side of the fence. In my show I always ask that as an icebreaker question. Is your top 5 games of all time. So now I'm getting this. Now I'm getting the receipt. So woo.
Yeah.
Okay, so top 5 games of all time. So right off the bat, I'm gonna say The Last of Us. I think that
Ooh.
the story is unlike anything else in video games. I think it's
Mhm.
dynamic. I think they capture the human emotion better than any other game I've ever played in my entire life. That story, the
Okay.
characters, the way they illustrate the human, I guess you could say dynamics between their emotions, and then the
Mhm.
way society is structured, even when society's been broken down, is it's like no other game. And so even
Hmm.
though there's other zombie games and other zombie identities in that medium, like The Last of Us has its own identity. It stands in its own little niche, as far as no other story tells a story quite like that. No not just in video games, in all the medium. So,
Right,
and
right.
that's why HBO is making The Last of Us show, which is coming out soon. So I'm huge into The Last of Us. God of
Mhm.
War 2018 is probably my next pick.
Yeah, yeah.
Boy, Kratos was fantastic to begin with, but then
Right, right.
you give him that personality, you give him that dynamic relationship with his son, and you get to see how he grows as a person and as a father. It is magnificent. That's another game that has very, very good storytelling. So I gotta say, God of War 2018, it mixes in that action really well. The Valkyrie fights are like no other fight in video
Mhm.
games. So that's the one I would probably throw out there in my top 5. Next up is going to be I'm gonna do this for the culture. Spider-Man Miles Morales.
Okay,
Spider-Man Miles
okay.
Morales, yes. It is a game that really strikes to me as a person of color. Like, I'm a chocolate man, and
Yep,
that
yep.
is the first time I've ever seen anyone in video games actually have a legit edge up. Like the whole point, his fate was on point.
Yo, yo, I like that. I like that take. I like that take.
Yeah, that was the first time I kid you not, I played I picked up the PS5, and it was
Yeah,
a
yeah.
couple of days after the release date, and I immediately downloaded Miles Morales, played that game, and then
Mhm.
the first thing that I noticed was one, he wears Adidas, so I'm like, okay, he's a part of the culture, and then
Yeah,
two,
yeah, yeah.
actually saw the fade, and I was like, they got the black hair right. You know how hard it is to get black
Yes,
hair right in video
yes.
games, man?
Oh my goodness.
Oh my
Even in
goodness.
movies too, because
Mhm.
sometimes actors not portrayed correctly. You know what I'm saying?
No,
But
for sure. For
oh, that's
sure.
actually
So,
funny though. I like
yeah,
that.
and then not even the hair thing aside, the story in that game is really fantastic. The gameplay, I think it is a shorter, more nuanced experience than the original Spider-Man game, because it is a
Mm.
spin-off of that Spider-Man game. It is, as opposed to Spider-Man, which is 40 hours, where 20 of those hours arguably could be trimmed out of that game to
Mhm.
make it a refined story, like a streamlined story. This is 8 hours, and it's a small package, but it hits well above its weight class. So I really think that's one of the games to where I'm like, okay, I see where they improved, and where Insomniac really took basically the improvements from the first game and really honed in on what people liked about that first game. So
Right.
I gotta say, Spider-Man Miles Morales is probably game number 3. Number 4, oof, this is gonna be a hard one. But Number 4, I hmm, I'm probably going to go with an OG here. I like at this
Okay.
point it's an OG. I'm gonna say Grand Theft Auto 5. It
Ooh,
is
number 5.
Yeah, Grand Theft Auto 5. And here's the reason why. I feel
Mhm,
like it is the best overall Grand Theft Auto game because like everything that 3, 4, and 5 did really, or 3, 4 and Liberty City and all
mhm,
that kind of stuff did well is because like it does just as well, if not better. And then it also has a very underrated story. The
mhm.
gameplay is fantastic. To this day, they have a next gen version on the like PS5 and the Xbox Series X and S that play fantastic. Like there is fantastic gameplay.
Right, right.
So I would highly recommend that one to anyone who's like just want to get back into that because everyone in the world's played that game. But
Mhm.
I would probably say that one, and then number five, that number five is always my that
Yeah,
one's gonna
number
be my
5
hard one.
cuts 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and everything else, so
Yeah, yeah, I'm going to. Oh, okay, I got two that's popping in my head. It's the Mass Effect trilogy and then the Arkham games. Ah. As a superhero fan, I'm gonna go with the Arkham games, and especially Arkham City. Like, I love Arkham City. I love Batman. Is my favorite superhero of all time, and to see like them do a good Batman game and a good Batman trilogy, despite Arkham Knight, failing to live up to expectations with all the stuff they had involved in the Batmobile. Like, Arkham City is a very good package. You still get to play as what I believe is one of the best superhero games of all time and
Mhm,
one of the best superheroes of all time in like the Arkham version of Batman, and to see his story and to see like his, I guess you could say, his journey from beginning to end of that story really being told in the way that it was with the Joker, with
mhm.
Penguin, with Mr. Freeze and all that, like, and Ra's al Ghul. I'm like, that was an amazing story. It was amazing
Yeah.
gameplay, and I got to shout out that game out. I don't think that game gets enough credit because without it, we wouldn't have Spider Man.
Without the Batman.
Without the Batman Arkham series, I don't think Insomniac makes Spider-Man, because think about it like
Ooh, that's
this.
a hot take.
Yeah, but think about it like this. Okay, so before like that, before those games, PlayStation only had Infamous.
Mhm,
Infamous came out, and then they moved away from doing Infamous to like Sunset Overdrive, which
mhm.
is an exclusive game for Xbox. Sunset Overdrive was a zombie apocalypse game. Like, they weren't even in that wheelhouse there yet again. Then you have like Arkham games, and that was the only superhero game around that time frame that was an open world superhero game, and it proved that those games not only can be
Mhm.
good games but can sell well financially. That game
Oh,
paved the way for so many games going forward.
okay, I see where you're going with that.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I'm not necessarily saying like the gameplay mechanics like spurred that, but I am saying like the commercial success of those games are probably what led Insomniac and PlayStation to say, okay, let's do a Spider-Man game that's very similar to that.
Now, you mentioned your 5 favorite games.
Mhm.
What is your preferred console of choice?
Like right now or of all time?
I mean, are all of those from the same console, or did you play a different console per game?
I'm gonna be honest, like 3 of those are PlayStation exclusives. So I'm primarily like, I have every console right now other than the Steam Deck. So I have everything, but I am
Hey.
pro yeah, yeah. I have the Xbox Series X upstairs, I have the S downstairs, I have the OG and like OG Xbox One in my bedroom. So I'm like, I have every one of the Xboxes, and then I have a PS5 and a PS4. So, and a Switch. So I have all the major consoles, but except for the Steam Deck now. But I probably play more so on PS5 right now. Like the
Mm.
Xbox, I play like a lot because of Game Pass. But other than Game Pass, they don't have anything exclusive that really drives me to that platform.
Huh,
And
that's actually
PlayStation
cool.
really, yeah, PlayStation has banger exclusives. I don't know if you've seen the PS5 lineup so far, but it is hella stacked. You got Demon Souls, you have Ratchet and Clank, you Rift Apart, you have like the Spider-Man games, Spider-Man like PS4, and then Spider-Man Miles Morales. The upcoming Spider-Man 2 PS5
Mhm.
exclusive. and then you have Wolverine is going to be a PlayStation exclusive as well. And that's not even mentioning like the other games that like people outside the mainstream don't know about, like Ghost of Tsushima and
Mhm.
The Last of Us. And well, I even forgot God of War. God of War is also a PlayStation exclusive. On the Xbox side, all I have to look forward to is Forza, Forza Motorsport and Gears of War and Halo. And Halo is going through a rocky time right now.
Yep, yep. Now, in regards to you being a lover of gaming, a lot of people always put a stigma that gaming detracts you from having a life, happy life, from being productive, having a job. How do you think that being a gamer enables you to pretty much cheat at certain things in life?
So I think a lot of that stigma is like an older generation thing because I think it's a side of
Mm,
two tails. Like the older generation still has that negative connotation towards video
yep.
games, whereas the anyone our age and below now think of video games as just a regular pastime. It's no different than
Right.
watching sports,
Right.
and that's
Esports, come on now.
exactly, and that's the truth of the matter. It's like video games is just a hobby, or for more people it might be like an occupation depending on if you can get into the industry or not, but
If you're
like
good enough, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, but like video games is a hobby for most people, and just like any other hobby, it's about the way you handle your time in your personal life and your life. Everyone's life needs balance, and
Mhm.
for some people that stress factor, that the de-stressing factor of video games is why why they play it. Some people play it for escapism, like it's all about the way you balance everything in your life, because
Mhm.
what's the difference between this and someone who watches sports 24/7? Or what's exactly like what's the difference between this and a person who goes out and play golf like 18 hours a day?
Right,
Like
right.
what's the difference between those two things? Or what's the difference between this and a person who's like training for a marathon, or even just a workout warrior and they're always in the weight room, always clanging and banging?
Yeah.
So like exactly, what's the difference there? It's all about the way we as people have balance in our lives, in
Mhm.
the way you personally like have balance, so to speak. So I I don't think that video games are like this evil stigma that they once were.
Mhm.
I do think there are people who have addiction factors in their lives,
And
and
everything, and
yeah,
everything.
exactly. So it's all varies from person to person, and then also like there's a mental discipline there. So it's just one of
Hmm.
those. Yeah, it's
Man,
just
you
one of
hitting on
those.
everything I wanted to talk about in one go. Let's
I'm
go.
sorry, I'm sorry. I should
No,
have like
no,
gone
keep
back a little
going.
bit.
No, keep going. You're on the roll right now.
Yeah, it's about the person though. It's a mental discipline thing. It's one of those
Mm,
things to where you are the person who like structures your life out. So if you have six other things going on, or you have like a family, you have a wife and
mhm, mhm.
kids, like me personally, I'm married, I have a dog, and I'm an avid gamer as well. So I have to balance those things out in my life. Like my wife is going to want like we have date nights. Even though we're
Mhm,
married, we still do dedicated date nights, and we do that once a week. It's just
mhm.
one, and like I just know that's in my schedule. And
Right,
my
right,
dog is a dedicated walker. He wants to go out on the walks. He wants to go to the dog park. Like
right.
so I have to schedule my life out accordingly to what
Mm.
the needs of the others are around me want. But if you're a single man, like, once upon a time I was, it was just up to me to decide that. And that's where you have to have mental discipline. That's where you have to have checks and balances of what you want your life
Ooh,
to look
he
like.
is
Yeah.
firing off. Okay.
Yeah, so man, this is my life right here. Like I completely understand there's some people who struggle with that. There's
Mhm.
some people who struggle with balancing everything. There's some people
Right.
who maybe work out too much, way more than the recommended amount. There's some people who might, like go out to eat like way too much, or different things like that. It's all about balance. And that's, like I don't know if you watched like Avatar: The Last Airbender, but like, well,
Yes,
that's one
sir.
thing Uncle Iroh always talked about was balance. Like
Mhm.
Zuko, you have to have that balance, and that's the same thing with real life as well.
Man, you touched on so much stuff. I don't wanna detract from anything that you said. Imma hover right back to what you said because you touched on so much important stuff. I did wanna just ask because I noticed because I wrote down what you were saying regarding the video games. your top 5 are pretty much all first person.
Yeah, yeah.
So you like the because you mentioned earlier regarding how video games for you are a mental de-stressing. Is that why you have like all first person? You don't want to be communicating with other people. You don't want to like butt heads with somebody, with a teammate. You just want to play the game, have a story, follow the journey, and then get an amazing, relaxing game opportunity versus potentially, having your day or night ruined if you're playing with somebody else and it just goes all the way wrong.
Yeah, so you really like hit something home there. I am a like the term for it. I am a single player first gamer. Like I do play single player games more and
I
narrative based
understand.
games way more than I play like multiplayer games.
Hmm,
And
hmm.
there is that factor of like I don't necessarily want to play with other people when I'm in that bubble. I want to be immersed in like the art that someone has put out there. I don't necessarily
Mm.
care about the shooters of the world or the battle royales of the world. That's not me
Yeah,
as a
yeah, yeah.
gamer. I'll play those every once in a while, but that's not
Mhm,
something I'm always driven towards. As opposed to like games that come out where like I can tell like someone put their heart into writing a
mhm, mhm,
really deep story, or someone put their heart into like putting you into the place of a character and you getting to see how that character's journey unfolds, whether it's for good, for
mhm,
bad, for rich, for poor, like that you get to see how that story unfolds. And I for me personally, that I believe that comes from my love of comic books. Like I growing up, I'm a huge comic book fan as well. So like I've always loved stories, and I've always loved the tales of like people or characters and their struggles, and
mhm.
seeing their struggles and such like that, or reading about their struggles in the sense of comic books. And so that's me as a person. Like I don't condemn anyone who necessarily loves that multiplayer experience. Like I like playing with others. It's just it has to be in a play. Well, I have to be in the mood for it for one,
Mhm,
and it has
mhm,
to be in
mhm.
a game setting to where I'm like, okay, I'm comfortable in this.
Nah, I completely understand because for such a long time, I was such a single player minded game as well.
Mhm,
Completely understand the reason why you like The Last of Us. You broke it down flawlessly. Same with God of War. I remember when the first God of War came out and I was just so hooked on it. And I wasn't even playing. I would watch my friend play it. And whenever he would ask for me to play, I was like, nah, I just like the story, especially the cutscenes, not even the
mhm,
gameplay but the actual cutscenes, the story, the lore, the interpretation of Greek mythology and how
mhm.
you have to be the one that is like interjecting into this Greek mythology, and it was always so intriguing. And that's why I wanted to ask because I noticed you didn't put any first person shooters, you didn't put any multiplayer, and I was like, oh, okay. You mentioned that you love the de-stressing factor and that bubble. I completely understand. There's a multiplayer game that had that kind of concept, but it was on the PC. See, I love PC gaming because I
Okay.
have such a hard time with the controllers. It doesn't click for me. The mouse and
Okay.
keyboard click for me. But there was this game that you were just it was like a MMORPG, but you were supposed to grind as if it was a single person game. And you just
Like
keep playing.
Destiny?
Yes, Destiny is one,
Mhm.
Warframe is another,
Okay.
where you just completely grind as a single player. You can have other people join in.
Mhm.
But yeah, I wanted to touch base on that because I think that video games are actually one of the most important things that you can do as a person to cope with stress. It's a very good way to release stress. Some people, when they go and you mentioned golf, in my case, I go and play basketball in the mornings,
Mhm.
or I'll play video games in the morning, whichever one my body tells me. If my body says, hey, I can't move, well, then I might just go to the keyboard real quick.
Mhm.
So I wanted to touch base on that because I don't think enough people give credit where credit is due. Because as you mentioned, the stigma regarding how games used to be and how they're making you unhealthy, how they're affecting the way you think and the stuff that you do, and that you become so addicted to it. You don't take your dog out, you don't pay attention to your wife, you don't pay attention to work. And at the end of the day, if you have that balance factor, it can actually really alleviate a lot of stress, a lot of pent up frustration, or as you mentioned, the love of an amazing story. Like, yo, I love a good storyline.
Yeah, yeah, you touched on a lot yourself there, like, and that's kind of me in a nutshell. Because like, I really do like narrative games. I like to be immersed in stories. I like to see, like characters persevere and go through things that are necessarily different than what I'm going through, or sometimes they're reflective of what I'm going through as well. But
Mm,
yeah, yeah, so I'm like, and sometimes it's not necessarily escapism. It is one of those things to where it's relating more so than escapism. But like, on the flip side of the stigma part, like the stigma is also going away because there's more gamers out there than
yes,
any other medium. Like
it's
people
growing
absorb that.
rapidly.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because like back growing up, you used to the entry to gaming was just consoles and PC. Like
Mhm,
now I would
and it was
hazard to
very
guess.
expensive too.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. Now I would hazard to guess that, like you have people in your personal life more so than you even know that are actually gamers, like whether or not they're extremely casual, everyone has a
Yes,
gaming device in their hand now because
yes,
everyone has cell phones. And
yeah,
so like mobile gaming has helped to change that stigma quite a lot.
mhm.
Like now people can't really just hark in and say like, well, he's a gamer, so he's a bum because like a lot of the times they're playing Sudoku or like a lot of times they're playing Sudoku or they're playing even like what was it, the Words with Friends or even like the Candy Crush, so to speak. They're playing games, whether or not they're like nuanced, heavy, big beefy titles that we play, or whether or not they're like small little mobile games, they're still games. And so a lot of people, it's almost hypocrisy for them to actually say like games are like the destruction of our generation, or games are the reason why our generation is lazy. Like, first of all, that's a wrong stigma. Second of all,
Mhm.
it's like it is a very different time in a very different era, and games have their own problems now outside of that old school stigma.
Hmm. Now, in regards to applying some gaming skills to, in real life. So, and not like games like Sims and whatnot, but even games like God of War, The Last of Us, like just this a little pause right there. Like The Last of Us, that kind of game would be ideal in a zombie apocalypse because now you are
Mhm.
literally mentally trained, ready and capable to know what you have to do. Worst case scenario. Okay, unpause. So like even games the single player games where you're not with other individuals that are humans, you still have cheat codes. So for example, like a game as gruesome as God of War still teaches you, as you mentioned, in fatherhood. Like a lot of people don't realize you can learn a lot of life skills that somebody else might not be verbally expounding upon you,
Mhm.
and by just playing the game and being attentive and focusing, not cutting out the scenes, like not just like smashing, like I don't care, skip, 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 but actually paying attention and focusing, you can actually learn a few things. And I wanted to ask you, what do you think are like the top three skills that you have learned? And if not learned, three skills that you have enhanced from gaming. It could be from these games or it could be a completely unrelated game that you think, wow, because I played this game, this one skill I had really improved.
Okay. How about I touch on enhance first? So with enhanced skills that I've learned, or like with skills that have been enhanced due to gaming, I would
Mhm.
probably say like perseverance is like one
Ooh,
that is one of the
okay.
ones that really stand out to get like to me. And this generation, especially like our generation and the kids who are playing like games now, are practicing perseverance in a level that I don't think any other like gamers have ever practiced. Because think about the games that are popular right now and what they're teaching. They have
Mhm.
Elden Ring, they have Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3. Like
Oh,
those games are about getting your teeth kicked in,
oh
getting
my
your ass
gosh.
back
I
up, and
quit,
then
man. I quit. I quit. I quit. I throw in the towel as soon as you said that. I tried
yeah.
that game. No, that's so
Yeah.
hard, man. Yes.
Exactly, that's my point. Like, there are people who love those type of games, and they love that journey. They love the grind of like, hey, just because I got my teeth kicked in, I'm going to get back up, and I'm going to
Mhm,
try this again until I beat it. Like, there's so many success stories of people who like have tried this boss over and over again, and it was just that one little thing that they changed, or maybe they grinded out until they got one
Mm,
level better, and then they managed to actually persevere through that. So I would probably say like perseverance right now is like something that I think a lot of people are practicing in video games, and it's one of the skills that I've really like always that video games have helped enhance. And that's like one of those things to where I'm like, that's something I always admire, because like even if it's not Demon Souls, like Ori and the Blind Forest, or Ori and the Will of the Wisp, like those are hard platformer games.
yeah.
They're not necessarily Souls games, but it's a hard platformer game. You
Mhm.
even have like more difficult games. Bloodborne is another Souls like game that is like on the difficult side. But you have other games that are like challenging. I don't know if you played Rogue Legacy or Cult of the Lamb, but they have like parts that are beefy, and they're like they are smaller indie games. So I'm
Mhm.
like, perseverance is something that I think video games is really like teaching a lot of people, especially like it's helping me practice into patience and perseverance. But like another one that I think like video games are really like helping me as a person grow is in how I manage like strategy, like
Mm,
strategic management, like the way I don't. You mentioned The Sims earlier, like Sims aside, I there's a computer game, and I'm not even a PC gamer, called Civilization 5 and 6.
yeah.
And yeah, in those games, you have to really manage a civilization. You have to think strategically. It's almost Game of Thrones esque. You have to think like,
Yes.
how do I appeal to like these civilizations right beside me? How do I make sure that like I can maybe keep the peace, and if a war breaks out, like I'm squad up enough to like handle my business, or like when the war breaks up,
Yeah.
yeah, when a war breaks out, like am I like, how do I actually like strategically overtake my enemy, or at least like how do I like take over their resources or burn their resources enough to where like I can force them to now tap to my will. So it
Mm,
is one of those things to where I'm like, strategic thinking is something that's very underrated in video games, and a lot of games make you have to think strategically almost instantaneously now, because like you have games like Returnal, which is a bullet shooter. You do have games like a Battlefield or Call of Duty that make you think on the fly immediately in a strategic manner. Some
mhm.
people just run and gun, but a lot of times they're not the at like successful into that, you know. But yeah, so I'm like, that is something you really have to think about, like that video games teach you and help you enhance those skills. And then evolution. Like
Mm.
video games help us evolve, whether we realize it or not. Like video games also help like really help us like really hone in on what our tastes are. Like whether or not if you play a racing game, do you like certain cars more so than others? Usually people who play racing games, they either play for escapism, or they usually play with the exact type of cars they really like in real life. So it really helps you like learn who you are, and then like video games help you grow in that dynamic as well. Like there are some people I know who didn't like basketball at all but played 2K, and then they evolved into an actual basketball fan. So I'm
Hmm.
like, video games help you evolve. Like they help you determine who you are as a person, interest wise as well. So that's something that like those three things are like traits that video games have really enhanced for me personally.
Man, that I should have asked you for more than just 3. Those were really good. I noticed though in the perseverance and strategy management, you didn't mention God of War. God of
No, because God
God
of
of War
War.
for me was a puzzle game, especially I only played the first one.
Mhm.
And so the first one, it was super hard for me because I was not so good at the puzzles. Like the
Yeah.
killing was fine, but then when it came down to like doing the puzzles, and especially when it came down to the timed puzzles, and then
Mhm.
it would like take me like 30 minutes to an hour, because then it's like, okay, so what I do here, 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 and then it's like dead, and then it's like gotta start all over, run all the way over here to then like push this crate, push this here, do all this so that way the boulders doesn't come and smash me through. And it's just like a lot of times I wanted to just give up right there, but I was like, okay, I saw somebody do it, I can do it too, and then I would persevere, strategize, get it through.
I,
But yeah,
I understand that.
that's actually
I
kind of
understand.
crazy though. So many games that you have regarding all these specific skill sets.
Yeah, like God of War is not like excluded from that list, but like I wanted to
You had a
emphasize
better list. You had a better
yeah.
list.
Yeah, but I'm like, I wanted to emphasize something that wasn't like that was outside of my top 5 games as well, because
Mm,
like there I feel like a lot of people would look at that top 5 list and were like, okay, he learned something out of that, but those are his favorite games of all time. That the list I
mm.
gave you is a diverse portfolio of games to where
Yo,
I've learned different lessons.
ooh,
Yeah,
okay.
through a diverse catalog. It's not just the top games that really spoke to me as a person, but I just things that I also learned outside of like things that enhance me. Like I'm a
Mhm.
basketball fan, like just like yourself. Like you're a hooper, but I'm not a hooper anymore. I know I can't. I'm dusty in the gym.
Yeah, you just
I'm not
haven't
that
gone
guy.
to the gym. You just haven't gone to the gym. Don't say that.
No,
You just
I ain't
haven't
got
gone.
that. I ain't got that anymore. I ain't got that anymore, man. I'm straight. I got you for a straight 2 points, 1 rebound, and 1 assist.
Oh, dang.
I'm straight scrub status now. But no, so like I've always been a big basketball fan, but like
Mhm.
2K is a game that I play, but I'm a weird person when I play 2K because I don't usually play my career mode, and I usually don't play like the actual my team mode. I normally play
Mhm.
my league mode, which is like
Mm.
where you build the franchise,
That's
where
the
you like
GM.
yeah, as the GM, and that's
Yeah.
what always speaks to me about that. Like, because I like taking a franchise and learning
Mhm,
and
mhm.
handling the X and O's and handling the day to day business operations while trying to figure out like almost like almost like inside baseball esque to where I'm like I want to figure out how to make a good team from scrap. So like I usually take the bottom tier team and I try to
Yes,
rebuild
yes.
them. Or yeah, so it's almost I have that started from the bottom mentality when I play those games. But like I'm telling you about this story because like one thing that 2K taught me is like even though
Mhm,
I'm a basketball fan, like that game has a list of playbooks out there as well. So like
mhm.
I am a person who runs plays while I play 2K. So like that that helped me learn some X's and O's of like different plays in basketball. And then when I took my wife to her first NBA game, I'm like, oh okay, they're about to run an inside pick and this player
Wait,
is
you
about to
did
go.
that in real life?
Yeah, yeah. I'm like, if you really just hardcore pay attention, like 2K, so like they have like the Mavs playbook, they have like the
Yeah,
Mavs
yeah.
playbook, the Warriors playbook. You know, like you can choose the playbooks when you run a
Right, yeah.
team like that. But like if you click inside those playbooks, it gives you the X and O's of like, okay, so with this player, you can run this play, and then like if you pass to that player at certain times, that play evolves into the like you that player will either like get the post will be open as a regard, or like this will be a back end screen, or like
Mhm.
it'll be a back cut. You know, like it teaches you all those kind of things. You
What
just have
the
to be
heck?
receptive of learning. So I'm like, you can really learn like coaches X's and O's in that game. It's not quite to the nuanced level of like real life because like you are playing with quite frankly, sometimes they don't update those playbooks to like real life scenarios or real life like coaches, such as like Boston's playbook. I think has been the same for like 4 years, even though they've
Mhm.
had two different coaches. So their playbook should be a little different than what it actually is. But I digress. The point is like you can learn some
Oh,
plays
that's
through that game.
crazy.
Yeah, like if you go to like I don't know if you have NBA 2K23 or 2K22, but like if you go to like the playbook style, they will
Mhm.
like if you hover over different plays, they'll even show you highlighted versions of like how the play unfolds in the game as well. So I'm like, and then you can practice that play in a practice or practice it or like execute that in a game, you know, and then you can see how that play unfolds in real life as well. Like
So you could see
they
it in real life when it like, "Oh, that was the play that I ran
Yeah,
on the."
like
Oh, what?
because because like you know players run those plays off screens, like off the ball, or like the pat, or like hey, this is to free up Steph in the corner, or
Mhm,
like
mhm, mhm.
this play is like the post will come high off the screen, like Wiseman will come up. Well, he doesn't really get to play with Wiseman in real life, but like in the game, Wiseman comes up, does a high screen, Steph will step over that screen slightly and then drain it, you know, like during the three
Mm.
because of that screen got them open. So that's one of those things you can learn different things about video games, about different like real life aspects. And it's not just sports. Like I know sports have playbooks, but like you mentioned The Sims earlier. The
Yeah.
Sims are like the Sims aside, there are other simulation games nowadays where
Mhm,
you can
mhm.
learn nuances of like there's a game called House Flippers, and it's about just about you going in and flipping houses.
You putting me on a
And
game.
yeah, for sure. Like, I don't know if you have Xbox Game Pass, but it's currently on Game Pass. Like, there's a game called Power Wash Simulator where you run a car wash and you wash cars, and it's like there's a game called City Skylines where you are the city manager and the mayor, and like you actually get to build a town. Like, you start off with a little small town and you build
Mhm.
up a whole city, and that teaches you like management and way and like how how a city has to plan with its waste disposal, how a city has to plan with like its like with its energy like resources, how a city has to like basically plan even though there's like a river in between the land that's like
Yep,
the
yep.
land it started on. Like, do you like you have to build a bridge around it? Do you build a hydroelectric bridge or do you build a regular bridge? A
Mhm.
hydroelectric bridge would give you like when the water runs through it, it gives you energy, like there's pros and cons of like having a windmill, like electronic windmill in the city.
Oh my lord.
Yeah, so I'm like, yeah, like in real life, you never really see a windmill in a city environment, but you do see it on the countryside, or like when you're on road trips, you see windmills out there in the middle of like fields and such like that. There's a reason why I'm like they make noise and people don't necessarily like that noise, and the game kind of emulates that. So I'm like, there are simulations now. There's like trucker simulations where they can
Yeah,
teach
I've
you
seen
how like
those.
yeah, where they yeah, I'm like there's trucker simulations, there's cooking simulations, like sim games right now are teaching people about even if it's not necessarily the every ins and outs about like the industry that the games reflected. It's teaching people about that and enough to where they are now way more educated about other people's occupations than they once were.
Man, that's actually pretty interesting and intriguing. I didn't know that they dived that deep because I know the trucking, I know the flight simulator ones. I
Mhm.
didn't hear about the power washing, the house flippers, the city management. I remember years ago I used to play Sim City. That's
Yeah.
probably that's probably the closest I came
Mhm.
to something like that. But that game you mentioned sounds like it's way more in depth and in detail and almost has real life application use, almost like every politician should have to take
You have
that game
have to
as the
play.
course,
Yeah.
and you have to get, like, does the game grade you or something?
I mean, like, the
Like,
city
do you
will
get
start to
fired?
fail. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
like,
you don't really, like, fail, but, like, your city can go bankrupt, or you'll have to, like, take out, like, extreme loans from banks around the area, or, like, next thing you know, like, the city will, like, start to, like, go on fire, or, like, people will basically, like, morale will be low, so everyone leaves the city, and if everyone leaves the city, no money comes in. If no money comes in, you don't
no
get to
taxes,
actually
yeah.
yeah, do anything with that. But that's another
Oh,
thing in city skylines. You get to control taxes. Like you get to raise taxes, lower taxes. Like you can put down what was it? The tollways and such like that in like
oh, Lord.
populated areas to help raise money for the city. So I'm like, it is very nuanced in a way that is so underrated, but it teaches you little things. I'm not necessarily prepared to run a city myself, but like
Right.
I feel like I'm more confident in about like what it takes to like help develop a city on a
No, you
construction
if
level
you
on
play
that.
that game, then you know what it takes to get the job done.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, I'm like, I don't necessarily know about like the politics about it, like, but other than that, it does kind of give you like a
Wow.
surface level thought of like what it takes to like develop and run a city.
Dang, that's actually pretty cool, and since we're on the topic of gaming, do you think that deliberate practice or consistent practice enhances those skills? And I know you only touched on three specific skills, but if you do practice, wouldn't that naturally mean that you improve and get better over time?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, everyone practices, and you know the famous saying, if you put like what was it, 10,000 hours into something, you're an expert into that. You like it takes 10,000 hours of practice to be an expert, but
Yeah,
like
yeah,
yeah, it is one of those things to where practice does make you better in most things. Now, there's going to be certain people who are just, not shooters, like they are not. they just don't click with shooting games, and it is going to be it would, yeah, like it takes a lot more for
I
you to
can't.
actually be good at a shooting game. And like me myself, like I like fighting games, but I'm not good at them. Like I'm not good enough to actually like confidently play anyone online without getting my teeth kicked in. So like
Yeah, yeah.
that's one of those things to where I'm like, practice does make you better, but there also, just like in real life, it needs to be like either a deep passion for it or
Ooh,
ingrained skill. So like,
ooh.
yeah, yeah. So there has to be that either one of those two things, and
Mhm,
even
mhm.
better if you have a mixture of both. Because like video games is a hobby for a lot of people, but there is a very much high level to this, like the esports level. There is like people who are out for blood, like legitimately who play for keeps in this sort of like
Yes,
in
yes.
this wheelhouse. Like there are people who harness their craft, and there's other people who just have innate skills in that like genre. Like I know a guy who like completely is extremely skilled in Madden, but is can't play Super Smash Brothers to save his life. And it's just one of those things to where like, yeah, they're not quite apples to apples, but
Right,
like,
right.
and that's the point here. It's like he can't do Super Smash Brothers as well, and it would take him a Herculean effort and also like a lot of practice to actually become a adequate Smash player. So it's almost like starting behind the start line, so to speak, for
Mhm,
a lot of
mhm.
people. So I can't. I'm not saying everyone. I'm not saying don't go out there and try your best and like put hours and hours of effort into it. Just know that with some things, it takes more effort than others. Just like in real life, like you don't wake up and have an ingrained like skill for a new thing in life. Like me with video editing, if I decided I want to be a video editor, I would have to learn a lot of different crafts and a lot of
Right.
different skills. I might have an eye for like how to do things, and that might help me along the way. But like it does take practice. But just because you practice at something doesn't mean you're going to get good at it immediately. Sometimes you're behind the starting line.
Now, how do you end up deciding which game to play? Because if you have all these different amazing games, not only can you enhance real world skills like being capable of going to maybe an NFL game, an MLB game, an NBA game, or any kind of game and recognize this is what they're doing and explain it to a noob that has no idea what's going on. And they ask you, how did you know? It's like, well, I was playing this game. Or you have a long day at work and you decide to just plop down. How do you decide what it is that you're going to decide to play, because it's so good?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if like that's a good question, but you kind of have to think of the video game landscape in the same way you think of like the streaming wars that's going on right now. There are
Mm,
so many actual good content and like good
yes,
content out in TV right now as well.
yes.
Like for fantasy fans and nerds, you have more and more like avenues to watch high quality shows than you've ever had before.
Mhm.
Marvel is putting out shows like crazy, like
Yes, I've
the
watched them all.
Marvel, yeah, House of Dragons, Netflix Cobra Kai, like um HBO is doing their thing, like Amazon's doing its thing with like the Lord of the Rings show, Rings of Power. Like there's a lot of high content shows to watch, and video
Mhm.
games are no different. Like when you there's just because there's a lot of video games, that means you either have to break it into priority based on like, do you need to play this game for a certain reason, or
Mm.
yeah, or like, like because there are certain games that come out that you play or might get because like they're a part of that pop culture like topics. That it's a hot
Yes.
game right now. Like I for Xbox and PC gamers right now, Deathloop, which is another game that stars a chocolate person. Like it has like arrived for the Xbox and PC, and now people are like a lot of those Xbox gamers are able to play a game that got 10 out of 10s last year. Like this was
Mm.
a 10 out of 10 rated game, but it was a PlayStation exclusive at the time. So it's just one of those things. Sometimes you want to be a part of that conversation, and sometimes like a game comes in and is completely taken over the world. And like Among Us during the pandemic completely took over the world, and a lot of people wanted to be a part of that conversation. But for me personally, like me speaking on a personal level, it's
Mhm.
just like everything. It's all about mood. Sometimes you're in the mood for something that's more like laid back. Sometimes you're in the mood for a like basketball game like 2K, or sometimes you're in the mood for something that's more immersive and story centric, such as like a Ghost of Tsushima in the world. or even something to the nature of I'm trying to think of another story centric game because I already said Ghost earlier. Um, oh, Horizon Forbidden
Mm,
West is
mhm.
an like one that came out this year. So I'm like, sometimes you're in the mood for something that's bigger and meatier, like a big RPG. And then other times you're in the mood for something smaller, like an indie game, like Cult of the Lamb, or like or maybe something to the nature of Journey. Like that was a story centric game that a lot of people loved a couple of years ago. So then it just kind of depends on your mood.
And then how do you feel like you decided to pick a game first time playing it? How important do you feel like the tutorial is in regards to how you decide to continue playing the game?
Ooh, I believe if it is a new IP, that tutorial has to be on point. Like if it's a new like intellectual property where there's no prequel, there's no game that came before it, there's no predecessor there. Like you need to really hone in and have a really good tutorial to get people in there, to get people to like say, okay, I get what's happening here. Now I'm ready for this journey. Now I'm ready for this story. Now, you don't necessarily like depending on how like nuanced your game is or how detailed your game is. Some games are like thinner than others. Some games like I just played a game that has only 3 buttons in the entire game. Like that's it. So its tutorial was more so about like how to utilize those 3 buttons, and then
Mhm.
it was a very quick, maybe 45-second tutorial, and we were off to the races. But like that's something that it didn't need a very like detailed tutorial versus something that like if it was a new fighting game that's just like Mortal Kombat or Street Fighters, like there's a reason why those tutorials like might need to be more detailed, might need to be more lengthy, might need to explain some of like the game mechanics a little bit more. Like I had never played Yakuza Like a Dragon, or
Mhm.
it was the first Yakuza game I've ever played, but it was also a turn-based game, which is like completely different than any Yakuza game. So
Mhm.
like that tutorial had to be a little more beefy. It had to be like a good maybe 30-minute tutorial to where you can kind of like really understand these are the gameplay mechanics, and then as the game goes on it adds on to those mechanics. So I think a game like a video games tutorial is very essential to like it's the age old expression. It's like first impression. You have to
Mm.
get someone with a first impression. So I think a video game like tutorial is key there.
And since you like first person or single player games more, how important do you think a good soundtrack is to a game?
Ooh, a soundtrack really can make or break a game depending on what type of game it is. Like, if it is a story centric game, a soundtrack such as The Last of Us. I just played a game called Beacon Pines, which is a narrative single player game. That's a point and click adventure game. You should definitely go check that out, everyone. But like, I just played those two games, and they have like bomb. Well, I played those games, and they have bomb soundtracks. Like, I don't know if you played a Persona game, but Persona 5 has a very jazzy, soulful soundtrack that's like it's almost like anime meets like hip hop and jazz.
Yeah.
And yeah, that soundtrack really brings to life the game, and I think one of the things like a lot of a lot of the top tier games do super well is that they really hammer in that soundtrack that really like makes the moment feel bigger than what it is, or more like heavier than what it is. It adds weight to something, or maybe it adds levity, or maybe it adds a hope to a moment to where like there's a little ray of like hope left in the world that are in the area you're dealing with. It could add like suspense and dread in a zombie apocalypse game, and
Yeah.
such as like State of Decay or like something to that nature. Soundtrack and a FX like team is like highly important in video games. It's one of the core mechanics. Like I always believe there's four like mechanics to a really good video game. It's
Mhm.
gameplay, it's sound, it's art design, and then it's story. I think one if all four of those are like as high as they can be, then I think that's like the apex of a video game. But like if any of those things are lacking, or if one of those things are completely like what like completely sucks, then the whole game like falls apart after that.
Hmm. Man, you just hitting on everything. Wow, that's actually a really, really well structured argument for the importance of, soundtrack, then as well as structuring what makes your best or favorite game come out to
Yeah.
life.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Even something as simple as Mario, like we all played Mario back in the day.
Facts.
Mario had like it's nuanced in a way to where like the gameplay, if you're really good at the game, you can figure out ways to where like the game isn't simple. But for those who like pick up and play it, it's a simple game. But
Mhm.
everyone knows Mario's soundtrack, even if they only know like two or three like songs from it. Everyone
Right,
knows that iconic music. When you hear na 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 na, like your brain instantly clicks, and
right, right.
that's the keys of a soundtrack. Mario, like even though that's a great on all-time banger for a lot of people, like that
Facts.
soundtrack helped it become iconic.
Hmm. Man, you just hitting on everything. I don't wanna stop, man. But I have one last question that I do want to ask you. In regards to gaming, if you could go
Mhm.
back in time to 18-year-old self and you have 5 minutes, if you could tell yourself one game to focus on, because this game is gonna propel you to become the happiest or the best version of yourself,
Ooh,
what would you say? One,
ooh,
because you can't just say play this game, because you got to say play this game because of this and this and this. What is the
ooh.
game that you would pick, and
Okay,
why
18.
would you tell your younger self to play that game?
Ooh, okay, 18-year-old, 18-year-old. Okay, so okay, so let me see. Let me think about that because
And
that's
you
a
can do the
really good
math.
question.
Yeah, you can do the math. You can
That's
think.
a really good question. That was
And while you do that,
13
I'll
years
do
ago
the
because I'm
Mario.
31 years old now. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. So I'm like, I was just thinking of like, okay, so all right, so that's '09, and then 2009. I'm trying to think of what games was I playing in 2009. Mm, let me think. Okay,
And
so
there are no wrong answers, by the way. This is
no,
just
no, but I mean, you're hitting on all points here. I'm okay. All right, so 2009. I had to pull this up real quick. I'm sorry I had
yeah,
to
yeah.
cheat, but like I had to
No,
do
no
some
worries.
math here. I was like, what happened in 2009? Okay, so three banger games. I only get to choose one though, right? So,
You could give
um,
him a list if it's too hard to just narrow down
no,
one.
no. I mean, I like the challenge.
Okay.
I like the challenge. So in 2009, I know for sure I was playing Batman Arkham Asylum. That was the
Mhm.
first game
Mhm.
that came out. Uncharted 2, like Among Thieves, really good game by the way.
Love
Like
that game.
I love it. Absolutely love it. Borderlands, Halo 3, ODST, both of those two games came out. Assassin's Creed 2, and then Dragon Age Origins. I loved Dragon Age Origins, like absolutely loved Dragon Age Origins. I probably put 300 hours into that game. So it was, yeah, I fell in love with that game. I would probably just tell myself, I'd probably say, okay, out of all those games I just listed, I would probably say play Sebastian. You're 18 years old. Play Batman Arkham Asylum. Play that game and just know that while you're playing this game, like
Mhm.
really learn, really progress, and don't stop getting better at this game, just like you wouldn't stop trying to get better in life. Keep always try
Mhm.
to better yourself. And just like Batman, when the odds feel like they're at their like highest against you, like know that you can persevere. Like just like Batman was locked in the asylum with all of his worst enemies, like you can overcome them. So like that's probably one of the things I would tell myself. Also, that was a bomb ass game. So I'm like, okay, keep playing that one.
Yeah. Oh man, you hitting on everything, man. I just want to keep going, man. Ooh. All right. Just for everybody listening, what were the other two that you, if you had to pick, what
Oh,
would
Dragon
you
Age
have?
Origins for sure. Like Dragon Age Origins is one that I put like stupid amount of time into, and it's a game that like it's a fantasy game that you could, if you really want, you can really put like a lot of time and effort into, and get a really good story out of it, and it really teaches you like, well, it doesn't really necessarily teach you, but you get to experience like these characters feel real. They feel human. They feel like they have their own emotions. It's one of the first games that I can remember to where like I really felt like I was always trying to like put the Mac on like Morgan, or like I was trying to like help and make sure my like crew was okay, because I wanted like I knew if they liked me more, our team
Mhm.
would be better for it, and I would get better gear, or I'd actually get to see how like our relationships would unfold. And it's that fact that in that game you got to build relationships with other characters, like real relationships, and
Right, right.
whether or not you said the wrong thing or gave them the wrong gift, your relationship would go up or go down. And if it went up, then maybe like there was something legitimate there. Like maybe y'all can like rekindle a romance, or maybe like you like no matter what you do in the story, like that character is still gonna be a ride or die for you. Like that game is so underrated. And so I'd pick that one. And then between Borderlands, Halo 3, Assassin's Creed, and Uncharted 2, I'm going Uncharted 2, because Uncharted 2 is a fantastic narrative game.
Facts.
Yeah, so I would go Uncharted 2.
Well, oh my goodness, I had such a blast having you on, man. And we could go for days. We might have to chop up a part two or something because
Man, just hit your boy up. I'm ready.
woo, man, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for everybody that tuned in to hear. I did see a few people that were there live. So if you enjoyed it, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. Check out Sebastion over at the ProNerd Report podcast. Once again, thank you so much. I'm going to have your tag underneath in the description below. If you guys liked Sebastion, any of his information, any of his answers, his nerdism, comics, his gaming information, his subtle, I noticed a little subtle comic slash a whole bunch of Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones. Definitely check him out there. My camera acting up at the last moment. Let me know that it is time to wrap up. I was just having so much fun. Let me see if I can at least get back in. All right, there we go.
Got
Thank you,
it.
thank you, thank you, thank you for joining. This is the second interview. Do you have any last words to add before I wrap this up?
No, no, thank you so much for having me on. It was a pleasure to be here, talk nerdy with you. Like you said, like I am a huge nerd, whether it be a sports nerd or whether it be like pop culture nerd, video game nerd. Like I'm in the mix. So thank you so much. It was a lot of fun to be on the show. And anytime you need a nerdy perspective, hit your boy up. You can find me at Sebastion23 on all social media platforms. That's Sebastian with the C in the front. So thank you again for having me on. Everyone, check out the Pro Nerd Report. We're doing some really dope content over there. We have interviews with our writers from Sonic the Hedgehog, the movie over there.
Ooh.
Like we have some interviews with a developer from EA. We are doing some really incredible things that I'm really proud of. And if you really like dope nerd content, video game reviews, video game opinions, and notable interviews in the video game industry, definitely check out the Pro Nerd Report.
Oh, you heard it from Sebastian. Check him out and make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Nico Pengin.